welcome to another episode of The Critics. Today's episode, we are doing a movie review of Black Panther. Ever since the debut in Civil War, I have been so excited for this movie. I've been waiting to see what they were going to do. I was waiting to see if it was going to be good. And guess what? It was. Now, before we begin, since we're talking about Marvel, I want to know if you know which movie both of these actors played in that was not a Marvel movie. You think you know? I'll let you know at the end of this video. Now, let's talk Black Panther. First off, I gotta talk about the casting. One thing I've loved that Marvel has done is that in a lot of their MCU movies, they have been hiring a lot of, I won't say necessarily new actors, but very lightly used actors. You have Chris Hemsworth, who had only been in a couple movies prior to starring as Thor. Chris Pratt really was unknown aside from his Parks and Rec days, but he was not really a big-name actor. Now you have Chadwick Boseman, who put out his first movie, 42, which, sidebar, is also a fantastic movie. He only put that movie out like 5 or 6 years ago. He's a relatively new actor, and he did amazing in this role. I remember when I watched Captain America Civil War, I thought, man, this guy has a really great accent. And then to come to find out that he has a normal speaking American accent, but he's able to put on that African dialect accent so perfectly that it makes you think he's actually from Africa. Absolutely wonderful. The rest of the cast in this movie is really good as well. Forrest Whitaker, Angela Bassett, Michael B. Jordan, Andy Serkis, Martin Freeman, the list goes on and on. There is just such a great cast in this movie, and I really enjoyed all of them. I thought every single person in this movie did a fantastic job. But talking about casting and different actors, I want to point out a couple things. I really, like I said, enjoyed the entire cast, but there's some few people I want to give some special mention to. The first one is Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis was phenomenal in this role. He had such a entertaining quality about him that was captivating. Everything he did, his snickering, his just goofy mannerisms, but it was goofy, but at the same time menacing and quite wonderful. I very much enjoyed his character and his portrayal of this character. He was one of the characters that, because he died, I actually was a little upset about it because I wanted them to keep him alive because of how great he was, but at the same time, his death was extremely important to the role and absolutely necessary to what this movie needed, so I was okay with it. But it was kind of conflicting because of how much I actually enjoyed his character. I also want to give special commendation to Michael B. Jordan. One of the best villains that any superhero movie has produced, let alone a Marvel film. He was captivating. The one thing that I liked about him is that he felt very real. He felt like he was legitimately a guy from Oakland, grew up in the streets, grew up in poverty, and living in this type of role. He was what you would actually expect, and there's a lot of praise to be said about that. He had a very real feel to him. In all the movies I've seen of Michael B. Jordan, he's always had this good guy, this very just like by the books type feel to him, maybe a little bad boyish, but not too much. And here he was legitimately bad. And that's what was great about him. And the fact that he was very relatable. You could see his side of this and think, I don't know if I necessarily like the way you're going about doing these things, but what you're saying isn't wrong. Any villain that makes you feel that way, that's a good villain, and his portrayal was spot on. He captivated me in every scene he was in. He was extremely captivating. Special praise to him for this. There was so much about this movie that was absolutely great. The shots of Wakanda, the different views in Africa, when they were talking about the sunrise being one of the most beautiful sunrises you will ever see, when they showed that scene, I sat there and thought, wow, that is one of the most gorgeous sights I've ever seen. It was so great. The visuals of this movie were absolutely fantastic. I just loved it so much. This movie had one of the greatest musical soundtracks that I've heard in a movie in quite a while. It had that hip-hop mixed with the classic African tones that you hear. That opening score made me actually think that they were gonna bust out some Lion King. Sorry. Anyway, the music was great though. Very much enjoyed that aspect of it as well. Let's talk about the story. I thought the story was really, really good. I love the fact that this movie took a very relatable story, especially in today's world, knowing about privilege and black culture and all these other things. It was a very intriguing storyline that was captivating, and I can see the realism of it. Again, going back to Michael B. Jordan being a very realistic and relatable type of villain. Everything about this movie I felt very in tune with. Action, of course, is great. It's a Marvel movie, so you know there's some awesome action scenes. The car chase scene, they showed in the previews where Black Panther is jumping and running on the side of the wall and pulling out that tire. When I first saw that scene, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so awesome. Then I actually watched the movie, and that part wasn't even the best part of that scene. All I'm going to say is bow staff through the window. Dang. Realistically, there's issues. I've said this numerous times. There is no movie that is absolutely perfect. Every movie have things that could have been better. Every movie is flawed in one way or another. And Black Panther is no different. Now, mind you, I have nothing but high regard for this movie. But realistically, there had issues. For example, some of the CG just didn't work for me. For example, there's a scene towards the beginning of the movie when T'Challa is being crowned as the king, and you just see a myriad of people standing on a cliff. I looked at that scene, and they showed it more than once. It looks very CG heavy, and noticeably so. I didn't particularly care for that. Speaking of CG, there was also a couple other scenes that were just a little too much CGI to the point where it was kind of distracting. In the final melee scene, a lot of parts of that looked very, very CG, like they were put in there. Now, I understand because they're doing these grand flips and jumps and people being thrown all about, that there has to be some CG in there, but it was noticeable. I like a movie that if the CG is going to be in there, I don't want it to be noticeable. And I did feel that at certain times, this was noticeable. And it distracted me at times. Doesn't mean the movie wasn't great. There's also another issue I had. A couple unanswered questions, more is a better way of putting it. So, towards the end of the movie, T'Challa's best friend, who had been by his side for most of this movie, and for most of his life from the way that it's been showing, decides to side with Killmonger and attack T'Challa as Black Panther for Killmonger to stay his rightful king. Now, that scene overall was fantastic, but at the very end, he decides to surrender instead of continuing to fight. My issue is this. He committed treason, and they don't show anything about that. I would have loved to have seen, even in the end credit scene, him in jail, him facing some sort of consequence. They don't address it at all. Even when his girlfriend told him, hey, the challenge is not over. Technically, T'Challa is still the king. He just ignored that. Another issue I have is that, and I guess it's hard to make this an actual issue, but it's just the way I feel. The end credit scenes didn't really do anything worthwhile. I mean, you see, at the first end credit scene, you see Black Panther addressing the United Nations, I'm assuming, and telling them that, he, as the king of Wakanda, is going to start sharing the wealth and blah, 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 blah. All this other stuff, which is okay. And then at the very end scene, you see Bucky. Cool. We all knew he was in Wakanda. And if you've seen any trailer for Avengers Infinity War, which most theaters played before Black Panther, you know he's awake by the time that Avengers Infinity War is So why does that matter? It doesn't to me. And I kind of had issues with that. I wish that they would have used that, like I said, even to deal with the fact that this friend committed treason and to see how that acted. I would have liked that. One thing I did love about this movie is that the humor was more on par to what it should be. This movie had some definite serious parts, and they kept them serious. There's a couple other movies that I've seen of Marvel where it was too much humor. And it was too much humor at the wrong spots, and even at times when they should have had a serious note, it got overshadowed by jokes all the time. This movie did a really good job of it. Had humor. Some of the parts of this movie was really funny. By the way, the girl that plays the sister, T'Challa's sister, she was great. I call them sneakers because, you know, she was probably my favorite character in this movie. But they did a really good job of balancing the humor with the serious tones, because there's a couple times this movie gets serious and it kind of pulls at your heartstrings a little bit, and you're just like, good job. But it really did a good job balancing that, so I gotta give it praise. Overall, I thought this movie was absolutely fantastic. I'm excited to see it again. I'm excited to buy it, add it to my collection. I would give this movie an A-. As always, thank you so much for watching. Appreciate all the support that people have been giving me. It's been a lot of fun. By the way, did you get the answer to my question about what movie these two actors have been in that is not a Marvel movie? Here's the answer. Did you get it? Did you remember? Well, hope you did. Until next time, you guys have a great one. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, and have a great day.